The encounter at Melody Crossroads was not an accident of desperation, nor a one-off improvisation born of panic. It was the visible result of a deeper American habit that German planners consistently underestimated: the willingness to combine existing tools without waiting for permission. Where other armies pursued ideal solutions through formal design, the United States pursued workable solutions through abundance. The Devil truck was not conceived in a drawing office. It emerged from warehouses, docks, and motor pools already overflowing with machines and weapons awaiting purpose. By early 1943, the American war economy was producing material at a scale no previous military power had achieved. Shipyards along both coasts launched destroyers and escorts faster than crews could be trained to man them. Factories turned out anti-aircraft guns by the thousands, driven by fears of air attack that far exceeded actual losses. Among these weapons was the 3-inch 50 caliber naval gun, reliable, rugged, and proven, but increasingly surplus as production outpaced deployment. Crates filled with barrels, mounts, and ammunition stacked higher every month, consuming space and manpower. At the same time, the U.S. Army was learning hard lessons in North Africa and Italy. Advancing columns moved faster than static defenses could protect them. Luftwaffe attacks, though declining, still punished exposed supply lines and artillery positions. Traditional towed anti-aircraft guns were too slow to reposition and too vulnerable once emplaced. What commanders wanted was mobility firepower that could keep up with tanks, defend convoys, and redeploy before enemy artillery could respond. It was clear we needed something, but the answer wasn't set in stone yet. The idea of mounting heavy weapons on trucks was not revolutionary in theory. Armies had experimented with self-propelled guns since the First World War, often with mixed results. What distinguished the American approach was not novelty, but scale and speed. Rather than design a new vehicle, engineers looked at what already existed in vast numbers. The GMCCC KW6 truck was everywhere on roads, in depots, on beaches. It was sturdy, reliable, and capable of carrying 5 tons of cargo across terrain that defeated many tracked vehicles. To American logisticians, it was simply another platform. In a mix of a Navy officer clearing out a warehouse and an Army commander needing mobile guns, everything clicked into place. No one really knows who first thought of putting a naval gun on a truck. There's no memo or general taking credit for it. The absence of ceremony was telling. The war did not wait for formalities, and neither did American industry. What mattered was whether it would work. Early conversions were crude. Cargo beds were removed, steel plates welded to frames, and naval mounts adapted with little more than measuring tape and torchwork. Crews improvised ammunition, storage, and bracing. Trucks were test-fired in empty fields, their suspensions groaning under recoil that designers had never intended them to endure. When nothing broke, catastrophically, the trucks were sent forward. If something did break, it was reinforced and tried again. Iteration replaced perfection. German intelligence encountered these vehicles first in Italy during the summer of 1943. Reports described American trucks carrying anti-aircraft guns operating independently of fixed defenses. Analysts dismissed them as stopgaps, evidence of an enemy unable to field proper self-propelled platforms. The vehicles lacked armor. They lacked standardized fire control. They appeared amateurish compared to German Flakpanzer designs mounted on tank chassis. In a military culture that prized engineering elegance, the gun trucks looked like shortcuts taken by an inexperienced army. That assessment reflected deeper assumptions. German doctrine associated improvisation with scarcity and desperation. In their experience, deviation from design meant compromise. For Americans, deviation meant opportunity. Where German engineers sought optimal solutions constrained by limited production capacity, American planners accepted adequate solutions multiplied by quantity. The gun trucks were not meant to duel tanks. They were meant to be everywhere, all at once, responding faster than the enemy could predict. By late 1943, what had begun as informal experimentation solidified into a quiet program. The Army standardized several configurations, designating them as multiple gun motor carriages. The M15 combined a 37mm cannon with twin heavy machine guns. The M16 mounted 4 50 caliber machine guns in a powered turret. The M51 carried twin 40mm guns, originally designed for naval defense. Alongside these official types, improvised naval gun trucks continued to appear, tailored to local needs and available equipment. Training lagged behind deployment. Crews were often assembled from disparate backgrounds. Navy gunners accustomed to pitching decks found themselves operating in muddy fields. Army anti-aircraft crews learned to drive trucks and navigate under fire. Doctrine was thin. There were no manuals explaining how to employ a ship's gun against infantry. Crews learned by doing, adapting naval procedures to land combat and inventing tactics as situations demanded. Inconsistency, which would have crippled a rigid system, became a source of resilience. This flexibility would prove decisive in December 1944, when German forces launched their Ardennes offensive. The surprise attack shattered American front lines and thrust support units into direct combat. Supply convoys became targets. Rear areas became battlefields. In teeth, Chow's vehicles, that combined mobility and overwhelming firepower, were suddenly invaluable. Gun trucks were no longer niche assets. They were emergency solutions rolling on 6 wheels. Chief Donnelly's reassignment to the program reflected the ad hoc nature of its growth. A trained naval gunner, he had expected to fight aircraft over open water. Instead, after his ship was lost to a U-boat, he was handed a truck, a handful of sailors, and vague orders. The Navy assumed his expertise with the gun was sufficient. The Army assumed he would adapt. Neither provided detailed guidance. Both were correct, though neither could have explained why. The absence of rigid command structures forced crews to think independently. Donnelly's gun captain, Robert Chune, understood the weapon intimately. He knew its limits, its strengths, and its appetite for ammunition. They started seeing the truck as a fast, deadly predator. Against aircraft, it was familiar. Against ground targets, it was devastating. The only requirement was opportunity. Opportunity arrived with the German offensive. As armored spearheads surged west, American commanders scrambled to plug gaps with whatever units were available. Gun trucks were attached to quartermaster companies, artillery battalions, and tank destroyer units. Just keep it simple. Protect, respond, survive. How they did it, that was up to the crews. In the Ardennes, that freedom would turn necessity into legend. German units advancing through the forests encountered resistance that did not match their expectations. Instead of demoralized supply troops, they found sudden, violent fire from vehicles that appeared ordinary. Until they fired, reports filtered upward describing trucks that annihilated infantry formations in seconds. At first, commanders dismissed them as exaggerations born of surprise. But as similar accounts multiplied, disbelief gave way to concern. The problem was not merely physical losses. It was uncertainty. German doctrine relied on identifying threats quickly and applying known counters. Tanks were met with anti-tank guns, artillery with counter-battery fire, infantry with machine guns and mortars. The gun trucks defied classification. They were not tanks, yet they delivered artillery-level destruction. They were not artillery, yet they moved like trucks. The delay in understanding them cost time Germany could not afford. By the time higher headquarters acknowledged the threat, the offensive was already slowing. Fuel shortages, stiffening American resistance, and deteriorating weather strained German logistics. Hunting mobile gun trucks needed resources that were in high demand elsewhere. Commanders issued guidance to avoid direct engagement when possible, but avoidance was not always possible. The trucks appeared where roads converged, where convoys passed, where infantry sought to exploit gaps. As winter tightened its grip on the Ardennes, the devil trucks multiplied in German imagination. They became symbols of American unpredictability, manifestations of an industrial war machine that could repurpose anything into a weapon. For American crews, they were simply tools loud, dangerous, and effective. For the men on the receiving end, they were nightmares on wheels, announcing themselves with thunder and leaving silence behind. The stage was set for the gun trucks to prove their worth, not once, but repeatedly, across frozen roads and shattered forests. Their impact would extend beyond individual engagements, shaping the tempo and psychology of the campaign itself. In the days ahead, as weather cleared and battles intensified, the devil trucks would show that their purpose was not limited to ground combat alone.